This is Fans on the Run, a podcast made by, for, and about Beatlefest. And now, here's your host, Alexanian.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Fans on the Run. I'm Alexanian, and this is my show, and that was my name. I don't know why I feel the need to say that. You know, you'd think after about 13 episodes I would know how to host a show. I still very much do not. All right, we have a Pennsylvania-based musician who I'm sure a lot of you know. He's open for Blue Oyster Cult, Keith Urban, Gilbert Gottfried. He's played with Robbie McIntosh, Hamish Stewart from the Paul McCartney Band, and he's jammed with the Smithereens, which I think is worthy enough of him being on the show as is. Scott Erickson, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Ethan. Very nice to be here. I do have to correct you. I didn't open for Keith Urban. I didn't open. I actually played on stage with Keith Urban.
I stand corrected. Thank you for correcting me.
It's okay. It was actually a very cool situation. He was doing a tiny little venue in Allentown, Pennsylvania, as his first album was coming out and his single was hitting the charts. And almost on a dare by some friends of mine who were doing the morning show at the local station, I kind of asked if I could come up and play with him. And he said, "Get your ass up here." And I brought my guitar with me, and we plugged in, and we did a couple of songs together. It was completely off the cuff, and people barely knew who Keith Urban was, and certainly nobody knew who I was. At least nobody really knew who I was. A couple of people did, but a couple of years later, Keith Urban was the biggest thing in country music, and nobody knows who I am.
Well, you know what? Now that I know that, I can say with full confidence you are fully responsible for Keith Urban's career.
No, I take no blame or credit.
Oh, was that a
no?
an
Not at all.
insult?
I'm a huge fan of Keith's. He's an amazing player. Amazing player.
You know, I'm not super into his music, but I do respect him as a musician.
Oh, he's fantastic.
But enough about these other people like Keith Urban. Let's talk about the Beatles.
I've heard of them. They're pretty good.
Yeah, some band from over across the pond. I was going to make a joke about how no one's ever heard of them, but then that would kind of put a damper on my mood because that's my whole show.
Yeah, those guys were pretty popular.
Yeah.
Once upon a long ago.
So, Scott.
Yes.
When did you first discover the Beatles?
Oof. Well, I first discovered the Beatles almost by accident. My father was an oldies DJ when I was a little kid and before I was born, but he was big into Elvis and Fats Domino and Little Richard.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I was raised on all of that stuff, and it kind of grew. I got into Chuck Berry and had heard of the Beatles probably early in the early 80s. And we were making a mixtape for my little sister, and when I say making a mixtape, we were using my dad's old reel-to-reel tape recorder.
Oh, wow.
To make a mix reel. And I had just gotten into the Beatles, and we were just starting to get into the Beatles. This is probably like around maybe 1980, 1981. So, I had known the Beatles. I had known a couple of songs just from hearing the hits on the radio. And I wanted to put a Chuck Berry song. And my dad said, the Beatles did a Chuck Berry song. And I went, really? And he went and pulled out the old Capitol Starline 45 of Roll Over Beethoven with the green swirl label. And
Gotta love those Capitol Starline 45s.
Absolutely. And we used the Beatles version of Roll Over Beethoven on this mix reel. I don't know whatever happened to the tape. My sister probably has no idea. She wouldn't even remember getting it. It was, like I said, so long ago.
The important question is whatever happened to the 45.
Oh, the 45 is safely in my collection. You
heard it here first.
As were all of the Beatles records that were in my dad's record library. Those are now mine, including one of the Beatles U.S. promo Holy Grail 45s. I have a mono Strawberry Fields Penny Lane promo,
dude.
and it's
with the extra little trumpet.
yes,
bit.
and it's not a counterfeit. It is an actual, real, legitimate pressing.
Oh, dude. Oh,
And it sounds
you're making me very jealous here.
and it sounds better than the one that they used that Apple used for the Sgt. Pepper box a few years ago.
Well, the one they used was just a.
It was they used a not only did they use a bad copy, it was a very bad vinyl rip. They used a vinyl rip of a bootleg pressing.
Wait, really?
Yes, really.
I knew it was a needle drop, but of a bootleg?
It was a needle drop of a counterfeit pressing. Yes.
Okay, that is fantastic. You learn something new every day. So, apart from that, Capitol Starline 45, what was your first Beatles album / record?
The first Beatles album I had was an Apple reissue pressing of Meet the Beatles. The Capitol album, Meet the Beatles. And again, absconded from my dad's record collection. My dad wasn't a big Beatles fan, again, being an oldies DJ, and again, my dad was born in 1944, so he grew up in the 50s. So the Beatles weren't his thing. As a matter of fact, he saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. He was in college. He told me the story. He goes, "I watched them. I laughed at them because I thought they looked stupid with the long hair, and I said these guys are never going to last."
But your first introduction to the Beatles was through Meet the Beatles.
Yeah, my first Beatles album again was the Meet the Beatles album, and I honestly don't think I could find a better first Beatles album.
There are only a handful that could, match that. Because that was the album that launched the Beatles. Well, if it's the album that launched the Beatles, if you want to count all those VJ albums.
It was the first Capitol Beatles album.
Yes.
Remember, VJ had put out an album
introducing the Beatles
quite a ways beforehand. And also Tolly Records had put out the single, again, to almost a year and a half beforehand.
As a Canadian, I always get a kick out of seeing those, Tolly, Swan, VJ stuff. It's like, man, they couldn't keep a record label at first, could they? And then their records were just gold.
Well, it's not
even gold records. They were probably physically gold.
Well, it's not
to have the license to.
Well, it's not that they couldn't. It's not that they couldn't keep a record label. It was just remember, the U.S. was a completely different market, and at the time, there were in '62 and early '63, it was almost unheard of for a UK act to make it big in the States.
If my memory serves me correct, the only band that had a U.S. #1 single up to that point was the Tornadoes with Telstar, which is not something you would expect with the phrase British band.
Right, because it was an instrumental, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good song.
Oh, it's a great tune.
Don't get me wrong. Oh, yeah. So after Meet the Beatles, what was your next kind of Beatles record after that?
I think after the Meet the Beatles album, it was just a collection of having my dad's singles, and I honestly think the latest his singles collection went up to was Strawberry Fields Penny Lane. So I really didn't get into a lot until CDs came around. And I think the first Beatles CD I ever bought was Sgt. Pepper, and then I got Hard Day's Night. So those were the first two Beatles CDs I ever got. But I had become more aware of the music in listening to it on radio and stuff like that. But sorry about that. I hadn't discovered things until I really didn't get into the music as thoroughly as I am now until the CDs really came out. So I'm a bit of a late bloomer in terms of Beatle fandom.
Well, CDs is still earlier than I got into them because those CDs came out before I was alive.
Right. Well, but that's not your fault.
I remember some of my earliest memories of the Beatles were, oh, the Beatles are now on iTunes. That's cool. Which probably makes me sound like such a young whippersnapper.
Well, you are, but that's okay.
Yeah. It's like I remember listening to my mom's old 8-tracks.
Oh, I was pre 8-track. I was vinyl. I'm a vinyl kid.
Well, in a weird way, I am also a vinyl kid.
Well, yeah, but that's only because vinyl's been come back around now. So and nothing.
But the thing is with that, I got in before the major revival happened. Back before it was all in, Target and Walmart.
Right.
So I still kind of have this snobbish attitude that I'm trying to shed.
I remember when vinyl was less expensive than CDs.
Oh, them's was the days.
Vinyl was $9.98. CDs were $14.98.
Oh, dude, I wish. You're lucky if you can get a double album for under like $70 here in Canada.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah. So, you're a musician. I've already said
yes.
that. And I was watching your stream the other day on Facebook. For those of you who don't know, Scott does these fantastic Facebook Live performances. And you have this spreadsheet of all the songs that you know. And it's basically like reading through the Beatles' entire catalog, minus like Wild Honey Pie and Revolution 9.
Revolution 9 has never been on the playlist. I have done Wild Honey Pie live.
Was it on a dare?
No, actually, you mentioned when you introduced me that I had jammed with the Smithereens. It goes a little bit deeper than that. Pat Denizio from the Smithereens called me up one morning. We were friends in the early 2000s. Pat calls me up one morning. Scotty, I'm putting a Beatles band together. We're going to do the entire White Album live. I need you as my guitar player and co-musical director.
Oh, damn.
It was like 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was asleep, and I went, oh, okay. and suddenly I was like, oh my God, this means I actually have to learn to play the White Album. and I helped Pat put a band together, and we played the entire White Album live. And this was we did it in 2009, I think. And the only thing we didn't perform live was Revolution 9, but we did the entire album.
You did Wild Honey Pie.
Yes.
How did you pull that off?
It wasn't very. It's not very difficult. I mean, it's only about 4 chords, and it just repeats over and over again. That was a major undertaking for us, and it was a lot of fun.
Out of all the Beatles songs, which would you say is the hardest to play?
That kind of depends. I mean, as I primarily work as a solo performer, so. It's difficult. I mean, as a solo performer, anything with the harmonies is going to be a little tricky. So something.
Well, but you pulled the harmonies off quite well.
Yeah,
with what you do.
I got a little toy on the floor that helps me with that. But
us guitar players always love our little toys on the floor.
Yes. But without the aid of technology, I would say the hardest thing for me to pull off was A Day in the Life.
Oh, really?
And that was without the aid of technology. That and stuff like the Abbey Road medley, or the Golden Slumbers medley, I should clarify. But with the aid of technology, there's really not much. There's not much I can't do. It's now just a matter of finding stuff I want to do or don't want to do. Yes, it is still probably the most tricky for me.
Well, the song is 90% harmonies.
Right, but I'm able to pull off. I mean, I think if you ask me what my favorite Beatles song is, I think right now my favorite George Beatles song is "If I Needed Someone."
Oh, that's a good choice.
And I love playing that one live.
That was, I think, the first song when I got my 12 string. The first song I played.
Well, of course, you have to.
Yeah,
you have to.
it was that, and You Can't Do That.
Of course. Well, yeah, absolutely.
And the one chord from Hard Day's Night.
But which voicing of the chord?
Hold on. The way I understand it, and I know it's like a very sensitive subject to a lot of people. My understanding is
there's three different things going on basically. One is if you play an E suspended 7 chord barred on the 3rd fret. I don't have a guitar in front of me for a change or next to me. One chord, it would be a G suspended 7 as a bar chord. The 12 string, one guitar is doing that. Another guitar is playing an F major 7 chord with your pinky on the high E string 3rd fret, so adding a G. So it's an F major 7 add 9. All right, so you have those two guitars. Matter of fact, I'll actually grab a guitar. I will stand up and get a guitar. This one I think is tuned down. All right, the 12 strings are packed away at the moment, so let's see. I don't even know if this is in tune. Close enough. All right, you have one guitar. This is the. All right, that's the G suspended 7 on the 3rd fret. Okay. Then you have the other guitar, which is doing the F major 7 add 9.
I think that was the one
Right.
I played. I'm not good with the chord names and the suspended add 7.
Right. Well, so you
diminished third.
You have one guitar doing this, and you have the other guitar doing this, while you have the bass hitting a D.
I would grab my bass, but it's in the shop.
Right. Well, you have the bass and the piano hitting a D. So you got all those things happening at once, and that's how you get the chord.
I saw this video of, I think it was Randy Bachman.
Yes.
Explaining.
Yep. Randy loves that story.
National treasure.
Yes. Randy's son is an even bigger treasure, in my opinion. Randy's son, Tal, is a good friend and one of my musical heroes.
Shout out to the son of Randy Bachman.
Tal Bachman.
The superior of the two Bachmans.
I wouldn't say superior, but I'm a big fan of Tal's. And Tal was a guest at the Fest for Beatle fans along with his dad a couple of years ago. And I have been a fan of Tal since his debut album came out in 1999, and getting to meet well all right, backtrack. Randy put out an album a few years ago called "By George, by Bachman," which was a George Harrison tribute album, and was touring to support that album. And he was booked. He appeared at the New Jersey Fest for Beatle fans, and Tal was with him, as part of Randy's band. So I was just more excited about meeting Tal, and Tal and I ended up becoming friends. We'd been friends on Facebook for a few years, but we got to meet face to face, and Tal's just a really cool guy. And Tal had a huge hit with a song in 1999 called "She's So High," which is just a brilliant tune.
I'll have to give that a listen once we're done. Now, you preempted my one of the questions I was going to ask later with
Sorry.
What was your favorite Beatles song? So now I'll ask the flip side of that question. What is your least favorite Beatles song? And please to God don't say Mr. Moonlight.
My least favorite Beatles song. You know,
It could be least favorite Beatles song, least favorite song to play live.
My least favorite Beatles song, and I'm going to catch so much hell from your fan base and your listeners.
Oh, you won't.
Oh,
I'll defend you.
I'm sure I will. My least favorite Beatles song is "Across the Universe."
Okay, that I don't blame you for. I don't blame you. I'm not a fan of the Let It Be album entirely, except for a few songs.
Well, I've discussed "Across the Universe"
That'll
with,
get
with
me even
so
more
many
hell.
people. Well, you know what? I accept "Let It Be" for what it is. I don't have a problem with it in principle or even in theory. It is what it is. I think it's the worst of Lennon's output. I think it shows how little John actually cared about being a Beatle or writing Beatles songs by that point. And "Across the Universe," people who want to claim how brilliant it was a rehash from the White Album sessions or the pre-White Album sessions.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
I
think it was only on the Let It Be album because they were just running out of stuff to do. So Phil Spector pulled that off of that World Wildlife Foundation album.
Well, that was part of it. Well, John, they brought it back during the sessions. They brought it back during the January '69 sessions because John.
I could just be talking out of my ass.
No. John was never really satisfied with the song. As you know, John was never satisfied with anything. John was quoted as saying, if he was it sometime during the '70s, he was in a conversation with George Martin, and said, if we could, I'd go back and re-record everything. And George said, not Strawberry Fields, and John said, I'd start with Strawberry Fields. Or something like that.
I read that somewhere.
Yeah. So John was never really satisfied. So he went back. They tried to do "Across the Universe." They tried it again. So yeah. So it was kind of but there's just something about the song. It doesn't do anything for me, and I think even less. Lyrically, I think even less of "Dig a Pony," but at least it's got some energy to it.
Yeah. The only song on that album that I can say is in my top, 20 Beatles songs is "I Me Mine." And I don't know how controversial of a choice that might be.
That's a great song. That's a great song. And that's one of those songs that I think Spector's work actually improved it.
How did you know I was going to say that?
Not a very controversial statement there. Spector, and again, for better or worse, what Spector did kind of salvaged "Let It Be." I've heard the original Get Back compilation, the albums that Glyn Johns prepared that were ultimately rejected. So.
Do you prefer the original, like Phil Spector, or the "Let It Be Naked" version?
Let It Be Naked is not what the Get Back album was, or it was supposed to be. Let It Be Naked is its own kind of thing, and it has its good moments and it has its bad moments. But anybody who bought Let It Be Naked thinking this is the way it was originally supposed to be before Phil Spector got his hands on it is sadly mistaken.
You know what, though? I actually kind of like the Glyn Johns mix.
But the Let It Be Naked isn't the Glyn Johns mix.
It uses that as kind of a starting point, but
it's not the Glyn Johns albums.
Yeah. If people want to call Let It Be the original, like a Spectorized version, then I would call Let It Be Naked the McCartneyized version.
Let It Be Naked is absolutely the McCartneyized version.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, I will leave that up to the individual listener. I don't dislike Let It Be Naked, but it's certainly not my go-to.
No. Well, with that album, it's just not a go-to in general.
For some people, it may be. I think.
Yes.
I think Two of Us is brilliant. I think One After 909 is. One After 909 is probably the only moment that I can listen to the Beatles from January 1969 and go, here is a moment where these four guys are really enjoying themselves and being in the moment and having a good time, and everything else has fallen by the wayside.
Five Guys. Don't forget about Billy Preston.
So Billy Preston. Yes, Billy Preston's there, absolutely. But again, just thinking about what was going on in January '69 and how these guys were just really didn't want to be where they were. That those 2.5, 3 minutes or however long the song is unbridled joy. And it's those guys just really enjoying playing music. If I can say this without fear of mincing my words or being or saying anything, for that moment in time, all of the bullshit got set aside, and they were musicians playing music and enjoying being together, making music together again. Everything else, nothing else mattered at that moment. So that
I'm glad you reminded me about One After 909, because that is, the other standout of that album.
Well, I mean, even looking at the album, For You Blue is a great little tune. There's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff on Let It Be.
I just think it would have been a better album if it was fleshed out more.
Well, for what it was, there really wasn't much of an opportunity to flesh anything out, because remember, for Let It Be essentially is a soundtrack to a documentary.
It only came out because they owed United Artists the film, and I think they owed EMI an album.
Well, that's as may be, but again, when you think about Let It Be, you can't don't look at it as an album in and of itself. You have to look at it as a soundtrack. It's a soundtrack to a documentary. But
I don't think I've actually ever looked at it that way.
But well, that's really what it is.
Huh.
The original concept of what was supposed to be Get Back was going to be the guys rehearsing and performing. It was originally going to be the guys were going to rehearse and perform a concert. And from what about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I was part of a symposium at Monmouth University all about the White Album. And one of the discussions we were talking about is apparently what January '69 was originally intended. It was rehearsals, and they were going to do a concert performing material from the White Album live.
Really?
That was the idea. They were going to find some exotic location and go and do a live concert. And then, all right, Ringo didn't want to fly anywhere. And all right, so we're not going to do a concert of this material. All right, so let's rehearse. Let's write a new album, but let's go back to our roots and it's be the four of us in the studio the way we started in 1962. No overdubs. We go in, we record, we write these songs, we record live, and we'll have and since we need a film, we'll have the cameras document us, writing and rehearsing these songs. And then we'll do a live concert of these songs. And then we'll have the album as well. And so these were what was posed for these January 1969 sessions.
You gotta wonder what Beatles history might have looked like if the original plans for January '69 went through. If it would have triggered, a return to touring of some kind.
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, you can. Everybody likes to do a what if thing, but when you get down to the very end of it, there's really no way of saying, well, what if or what would have been, because everything in the Beatles' history kind of worked out the way it absolutely had to. And if you look back, how unbelievably lucky and fortunate we have been now, in that at almost every pivotal moment in Beatles history, there is some kind of documentation of it. There are recordings, there are photos. In some cases, there's even film footage of every significant day. Literally, you go back to June, what was it, July 6th, 1957? Or was it June? Whatever, the day that John and Paul first met.
Yeah.
There are photos of John and the Quarrymen on stage. There is audio of John and the Quarrymen on stage. You know, and now apparently there's some silent film footage that some guy with a film camera took.
What?
I could have sworn I saw something. I may be wrong, but the point is, we have recordings, we have photos of the day that John and Paul met. You know, we've got recordings of the Beatles at the Star Club. You know, we have there's audio of rehearsals from the Cavern Club of Ringo's first, you know, when Ringo first joined the band. We've got the Decca auditions were recorded. You know, so I mean, we've got the Liverpool 1960 tapes of Paul, George, John, and Stuart Sutcliffe. You know, what other band in history has just somehow coincidentally has every part of their formative history somehow documented like this?
Now, I'm not a religious person, but that it seems like there's some sort of like divine intervention there, that there just happened to be, you know, someone like documenting this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily believe in coincidences, but I mean it's pretty incredible, you know. I mean, I think Apple's been doing an amazing job with the Sgt.
Well,
Pepper.
Apple hasn't really stopped.
Well, I mean, think about it. With the last three box sets, Pepper, the White Album, and Abbey Road, those things have been fantastic. I mean, we've been getting they've been giving the fans what they want.
Except for Carnival of Light. I'm still pissed that wasn't on the box. Even if it is, Mark Lewison told me personally that it's nothing impressive. Like, that I would be very disappointed if I heard it.
I honestly don't know if you can hear the sound of my eyes rolling in the back of my head at you mentioning Carnival of Light.
It's, you know, regardless if it's good or not, it's become that mythic thing.
Yeah, but you know what? It's one of those, the only reason anybody cares about it is because it's the Beatles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, can you blame people? Like, the Beatles is the band where you can pretty much go the closest thing to knowing everything about them and having something that's still out of reach for everyone except maybe 4 people.
Yeah, but if it's that bad, why does it really matter? I mean, I get it. There's some kind of, you know, curiosity, but if it's really that bad, it's just, I mean, I understand that people want to hear it, but the fact that everybody's so mad, oh, I can't believe they're not giving it to us. Well, you know what? They don't have to give us anything. You know, Beatle fans are not entitled to anything. You know, the Apple doesn't have to give us anything.
That is a good point.
And I'm sorry if that offends or upsets people. I love the Beatles. The Beatles.
No,
are
you're
my,
absolutely right.
The Beatles are my all-time favorite band, and I love hearing outtakes and demos and stuff that I've never heard before. But do I think we deserve, as fans, do I think we deserve to hear every scrap of recorded tape of them? Absolutely not.
I mean, it wasn't released for a reason.
It you know what? It was released. It was released once. It was released for its original intended use, and then it was gone. And you know what? It's not a big loss. It really isn't.
Realistically, everything I've heard just makes it sound like a less interesting Revolution 9.
Exactly. And that's the whole thing. I get it. I understand that people want to hear it for historical significance. But what if the actual, hearing it is a huge letdown from the hype?
I mean, even if it is a letdown, I think some people would be at least satisfied knowing, like, well, at least I've heard it.
Yeah, but then there's always going to be the people who are like, man, we waited all this time and this is it. There's always going to be people who are never satisfied and who are always going to complain.
Yeah. The only other song that I can think of that has this kind of hype surrounding it is the 26-minute version of Helter Skelter.
We've heard half of that already. We got half of it on the Abbey Road or on the White Album box.
Yeah, but what about the other half?
You know what? If the other half is like that, I'm glad we don't have it. I mean, again, yes, the 26-minute version. If it's another 12 minutes or 13 minutes of what we've heard, no thanks.
I mean, the best thing about the Beatles is even if they didn't release any of those outtakes, they still provided us with, I think, the greatest catalog of recorded music in the history of, music.
I will not argue that at all. Absolutely. That's, the music is phenomenal. And that's why, 50 years after the band broke up, There's
still nerds like us talking about
it. Exactly. There are 17 and 18-year-olds like yourself doing podcasts. There are guys who are making their living still putting on boots and suits in tribute bands. Making a living, playing the music.
There's ways to make a living.
Absolutely. I mean, what other bands are there that that 50 years after they broke up are still generating this much interest and this much controversy?
That's why it angers me to the core whenever anyone tries to say, like, the Stones are better. It's like, shut the fuck up. No, they aren't.
You know what? But there is no better. It's all a matter of opinion. I mean, is Charlie Watts a better drummer than Ringo? I don't know.
He's a different drummer.
He's a totally different drummer. Could Ringo play a Stones song with the same groove as Charlie Watts? Absolutely not. Could Charlie Watts play a Beatles song with the same groove and feel as Ringo? Absolutely not.
No. They're fundamentally different bands, but I feel like comparing them is not exactly favorable to the Stones.
No, I was in a band years ago, and while I love the Stones, and I was the bass player in the band, and my guitar player loved the Beatles, the be-all and end-all of rock and roll for him was the Rolling Stones. For me, the be-all and end-all was the Beatles. And we used to laugh and joke, and I used to tell him, said, yeah, the Stones just did everything the Beatles did a year later. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, what year did Norwegian Wood come out with the sitar? He's like, yeah, 1965. I said, okay. What year did Painted Black with the sitar come out? He's like, okay. I said, all right, what year did Sgt. Pepper come out? 67. What year did Satanic Majesty's Request come out? And he went, shut up, man.
I will not sit here and let my precious Satanic Majesty's Request be trashed.
I'm not trashing the Stones. I love the Stones.
I know. I'm putting words in your mouth here.
No, don't do that, because I don't do that. Matter of fact, one of the things I have dumped in my phone right now for my listening when I'm on the road is I've got the Stones mono box set in high res audio, and I've been listening to that when I'm on the road, and I've been rediscovering how good some of the Stones stuff really was.
Especially that, 64 through 69 Brian Jones era.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because I feel like the Stones are overrated for the wrong reasons and underrated for, all, like, really kind of groundbreaking stuff they did. That kind of gets lost in betwixt the satisfactions.
I don't know if I would consider the Stones groundbreaking. I think they were a great blues band. But I think the Yardbirds were a better blues band.
That is, I as much as I love the Stones, I will have to admit that.
I think the Zombies were an incredible blues band when they started out.
Oh, I love the Zombies so much.
But like I said, for me, I mean, when I say to me, there is no are the Stones or the Beatles better. There is no better. Which do I prefer more? I prefer the Beatles over the Stones, but do I think one is better? No.
That's a fair point.
But at this point, though, because I've listened to the Beatles so much, before I'll listen to the Beatles or the Stones, I'll listen to the Who right now.
Smart man. I would say, aside from the Beatles, because I don't even consider the Beatles, when I'm rattling off my favorite bands, I don't even include the Beatles in that list because that's just kind of a granted.
I'm exactly the same way.
The non-Beatles list kicks off with the Who, then maybe like the Small Faces.
Wow. I actually go a little bit more recent. I don't even talk about the Beatles or the solo stuff, but my all-time favorite band, ignoring the Beatles completely, my all-time favorite band is a band from Scotland called Delamitri.
Really?
And then my all-time favorite American rock and roll band is the Smithereens.
Of course.
But
Smithereens are awesome.
The Smithereens are awesome, and like I said,
and from what I hear, they're great guys.
They really are. They really are. And Pat Denizio, rest his soul, was a great guy as well. And
is that the man who coined the term for you, the human jukebox?
Yes, Pat is the one who gave me the nickname, the human jukebox, and Pat gave me that nickname because, again, I had this list of songs that I would just hand out at my gigs and just say, here's everything I know. I don't make a set list. You tell me what you want to hear. Here you go. And Pat just said, Scott Erickson, the human jukebox. And there's a video on YouTube that I posted years ago of me playing bass with Pat and Jim Babjack, the guitarist for the Smithereens. I think we either do it was either Blood and Roses or Behind the Wall of Sleep, playing Smithereens tunes at the first of what became an annual tradition. Pat was doing a Memorial Day bash in his backyard, inviting friends and stuff, and we'd set up and it'd be like a backyard jam session, and I got to play with him and Jimmy, and that was a couple of years before we ended up doing that White Album thing. But for me, the highlight of just this is relatively early on in my career. Just the highlight of being a Smithereens fan. Just, who would have thought that? I mean, it's always a thrill to get to meet a band you admire.
Yeah.
And then when they turn out to be cool people on top, that's really that's awesome. But then, when you end up getting to join them on stage, the experience that I love to tell, the story that I love to tell about the Smithereens, before all this happened, they were down playing in Falls Church, Virginia at the State Theater. And it was like the weekend. It was a week or two before my birthday, so I decided I was going to take the week off of gigs, and I was going to buy tickets to 3 Smithereens shows in a row and just follow them on the road for the weekend. And I got there, and Pat's like, "Hey, grab a guitar case. Come on in. You're with the band tonight." And he's like, "Yeah, come on in, hang out." So I'm there for sound check, and I was like, "Hey, Pat, can I ask a pretty ballsy big favor?" He's like, "Sure, what's up?" I said, "I have my bass in my car. After you guys are done with your sound check, if there's a few minutes, is there any chance that I could come up and play bass on a tune with you guys and Severo could take some pictures for me?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "I don't see why not." So hung out, at the end of their sound check, Pat's like, "Scotty, go get your bass." And he says to Dennis and Jimmy, he goes, "Let the kid come up and play bass on a song with us." And Severo, "Can you use Scott's camera and take some pictures?" I was like, "This is actually happening. I can't believe it." So we got up. He goes, "What do you want to play?" I said, "Why don't we do your version of One After 909? The Smithereens had put that on a B-side. And he's like, "Okay." And Jimmy kicked off the song on guitar, and I started playing bass, and here I am playing bass. This is like this is maybe 2006. So how old am I in 2000? I don't even remember.
You can plead the fifth on that one.
Yeah. Well, I was in my mid to late 20s, early 30s maybe. Because let's see, it's 2020 and I'm 48 now, so subtract 14 years.
If any of my viewers are listening out there, you all know I suck at math. If you've listened to the John Montana episode.
Oh, you had John on. Johnny's a good friend and a great bass player.
He asked me what 25 minus 7 was, and I blanked for about 7 seconds.
Well, let's see. So what? I'm 48 now, so 14 years. So what? I was 34, or no, 20. I don't know. Whatever. Don't make me pull out the calculator app because I can't think on my.
Oh,
feet
I'm not.
Well, but anyway, the point is, here I am, this kid, been a Smithereens fan since I started picking up a guitar. When I was 16 or whatever, and here I am playing with these guys. And singing a harmony, and that's how I ended up becoming friends, really solidifying a friendship with them, and it was over a Beatles song, no less. So
once again, proving that the Beatles bring us all together,
and in proof that and in actual documentation of the fact that nothing is Beatle proof. Danny Harrison and Nigel Godrich have cameo appearances in Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
What?
Yes.
Do they?
Danny Harrison and Nigel Godrich appear as Resistance troops in a crowd shot in Star Wars Episode 9.
Well, damn.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. I was like, yeah. Apparently, yeah, Nigel Godrich is good friends with J.J. Abrams. So yeah, that's a little aside, but yeah. So anyway, that was my first time I got to play. But anyway, I digress. At the end of this video that I'm playing with Pat and Jim at Pat's backyard, he introduces the band who was playing with him on the song, and Jim Babjack from the Smithereens, and Scott Erickson, the Human Jukebox, on the bass.
And, I mean, That would just be, being given a nickname by a hero. That's just got to be the best feeling in the world.
It doesn't suck. It didn't suck. Yeah.
I'm going to bring us back to the Beatles.
Good place.
What did the Beatles mean to you?
Oh. What did the Beatles mean to me? Beatles, I don't have the Beatles don't have a deep philosophical meaning to me. Beatles mean music. The Beatles are rock and roll. It's music. I don't find a deeper meaning behind anything, as much as I know a lot of other people do, and that's cool. Just for me, it's meaning and if I do have to find a deeper thing, I think it's family, because I have met some of my best friends and people I call family. I've met through and because of the Beatles music. Because I've met people at the Fest for Beatle fans.
Same thing with me. It's, even though last year at the Chicago Fest, it was my first ever fest, all these people treated me like I was family. And now I feel like I've been welcomed into this world. And I have, my Beatles family. One of us. I will say something touching on that point. When I first walked into the lobby at the Hyatt Regency in Chicago, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. Like, okay, either this is going to be cool or it's going to be like a cult.
It's both.
And then I turned the corner and, they had like candy out and they had literal Kool-Aid.
It's both.
And I thought, it's like, okay, so this is a cult.
Oh, it's,
but
yeah.
It's my favorite cult ever.
I was in Chicago. Did you see me in Chicago? I was there.
I think I might have.
I was the guy running around with the blue beard.
Hence the nickname Bluebeard.
That would be it. Yeah. Yeah, I've been a part of the Chicago Fest. I've been going to the fest since '91. I started in Jersey. I went to Chicago in '93, '94, and then again in '98, and I started going back to Chicago in 2014, and haven't missed one in Chicago since.
Well, except for this upcoming one, which
this one doesn't.
all miss.
This one doesn't count. There is no fest this year, so we're not missing one.
That's a good point. There's a virtual fest. Which
yes, and I'm
actually quite excited about that too.
I've been asked people have asked me if I'm going to be part of the virtual fest, and I can't say yes because the fest hasn't asked me yet. But I will venture a guess and say, as long as my gig schedule allows, if I don't end up having a real gig or an in-person gig, I most likely will probably do a set for the virtual fest again. Because I did do a set for the virtual fest for the New Jersey show.
I really like the virtual fest because I wasn't going to be able to, go to the New York fest anyways. So it felt like I kind of got to experience something in a form that I wouldn't have got to experience otherwise.
Oh yeah. The virtual fest was interesting and kudos and big credits to Michelle and Tilly Lapidos and Danny Abriano for really getting it all together and making it work as well as it did. And I think when they do the virtual fest for the Chicago weekend, it's going to be even better because they really know how to get things, how to make it all work now. So, yeah.
I'm going to hit you with some quick fire questions.
Do it.
What's your favorite Beatles album?
The American version of Rubber Soul.
The American version?
Yep.
Fair enough. What's your least favorite Beatles album?
Oof.
You can pick, U.S., British. You can even pick compilations if you want.
I would probably. I think a quick fire. I'd probably say Beatles for Sale.
Really?
Yep.
I've heard that said a lot. Is it the cover
not a,
versions?
It's not. No, it's not a bad album. I mean, it's a Beatles album. How is a Beatles album going to be bad? But
there's no such thing as a bad Beatles album.
But
they're all great.
But when you come off when you come off the 3 in a row hit and run, the grand slam of Please Please Me with the Beatles and A Hard Day's Night, Beatles for Sale's kind of a step down.
And then especially when you follow it up with Help.
Exactly. So while Beatles for Sale is not a bad album, it's not as good as the other 4 of the first 5.
I will accept that. Beatles for Sale, I really like that album, but I can agree. It's actually, no, I can't agree that it's not as good as Please Please Me. I am not a fan of that album.
Yeah, you're just wrong. But that's okay.
Okay, you know what?
I'm sorry.
Kudos to you. That's the first time a guest has said that to me, and I appreciate that.
You know what?
Because I say that to people all the time.
Well,
You're just wrong.
Here's the thing. How can you dislike or not be a fan of any album that starts with I Saw Her Standing There and ends with Twist and Shout? See, you don't even have an answer. So done. You didn't have it. You couldn't even answer. So your next rapid fire question, please, sir.
I have been usurped. I am very impressed right now. This is going to be one of the better episodes.
Cool.
Okay, who's your favorite Beatle?
Stu.
I thought you were going to say Stig.
No, but my favorite Ruddle was Nasty.
That's it. You just reminded me of something. You had would you call it a friendship with Neil Innes?
I would call it. Yes, I wouldn't say it was a close friendship, but I would say it did cross the line from friendly acquaintance to friendship. He did know me by name and by sight, and I mean, we didn't see each other or talk to each other regularly, but whenever he was at the fest and he saw me, there would always be, Scott, how are you? And a hug and a handshake and a greeting, and so yes, Neil was a friend.
Yeah. I'm very sad that I never got to meet the man, because I'm such an admirer of his work. Let it be, the Ruddles, the stuff he did with Monty Python even, and especially the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Yes. Yeah.
I could probably found the Canadian chapter, or I could start the Canadian chapter of the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band fan club.
Then do it. We'll get you in touch with my friend Rutland Ken.
I don't know how to respond to that. I could do it.
Rutland Ken Thornton. Ken is a good friend of mine from Indiana who was Neil's touring guitar player in the Ruddles for the last 2 decades.
I'm going to hit you with another question.
Okay.
Why do the Beatles still matter?
Because music still matters.
Because music still matters.
Music still, as long as music is still relevant and music still matters, the Beatles' music will still matter. Whether or not the artist themselves will matter, to me it all depends. Why do the Beatles matter? The music, to me, everything always goes back to the music. But as long as there will be people to carry on the legacy and carry the torch and tell the history, that's why they'll matter.
Well, that's why I think people like you and the guys in the boots and the suits are important, because they're kind of the carriers of the torch.
Yep. and kids like you, and I don't use the term kids as demeaning at all. You know,
I don't take
mean,
it as demeaning.
good, please, good, because I'm not, because it's certainly not intended. I mean, you know, I mean, you're younger than my nephew, my oldest nephew, but you know, it's guys like you who are helping the younger generations to appreciate how good and important this music still is.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, honestly, to me, it doesn't matter if somebody says to me, you know what, I think the Beatles look stupid, or I could care less about their philosophies or this
Yeah.
or that, but the music is cool. As long as you dig the music, man, that's all I care about.
What do you say to people who say that the Beatles are overrated?
I'd say I asked them. I said, "Well, you know, overrated, but what's your basis for saying that? You know, overrated means you are unfairly praised without having anything to back up that praise. You know, they sold millions of records. They had you know, gold records, platinum records. You know, they were on the charts. They're still on the charts. You know, so where does the overrating come from?"
I've said this about the Beatles before to friends of mine when we've talked about this, because I have a friend who thinks that the Beatles are, you know, a little overrated. And I always say I don't think the Beatles are overrated. I think they're just rated enough.
That's, you know what? Next time you talk to your friend and he says the Beatles are overrated, ask him why he thinks they're overrated. What about them is actually overrated?
The person I'm kind of referring to has said, you know, people think that they're just the most important thing that's ever happened to music, and that music wouldn't have really happened without them, when there were other bands like, you know, the Velvet Underground near the same time
Well,
who
you know
were
what?
doing more inventive things. Or
You
at
know
least
what?
that's what he says.
Well, the thing to look at is look, and I have a very dear friend who is also a musician, and despite what he says, he is in fact a Beatles fan. He is in fact a Beatles fan, but he's over the Beatles. He's over the experience. He goes, you know what? There are other bands out there. There are other musicians to admire and to follow and to praise. He goes, I get that the Beatles were great, but it's done. He says McCartney hasn't done anything worthy since he stopped working with Elvis Costello. and honestly, in some aspects, he's kind of right. You know,
In a
I
way,
won't
he
mention.
is.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, a lot of what he says, and he says a lot of this publicly, and he does a lot of it to get a rise out of his Beatle fan friends, including me.
Is
And
it working?
Sometimes, but a lot of times I'm just like, you know what, dude? I know you're just trying to. I know how you really feel, but I also understand what he's talking about, because there are a lot of other bands. He thinks the Kinks blow the Beatles away.
See,
And
the thing is, I would say that the bands like, you know, the Stones and the Kinks should be on that same or near that same kind of level. But what really does it for me is their latter day stuff. You know, the Kinks and the Stones. They lose me after about 1970.
well, honestly, I've listened to the Kinks like throughout their career, and I find I like the hits. The rest is just kind of me. I feel the same way about Queen. You want to talk about a band? You want to talk about a band that's overrated? All right,
Thank you.
I love Queen's hits. I can't get enough of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I've listened to A Night at the Opera, and I'll tell you what. Hold on, let me see. Let me do something here.
What's the name of that song on that album? I'm in love with my car.
Oh. Yeah. Let's see. I'm looking at the track listing.
Albeit smartest move in history from Roger Taylor, the drummer, for managing to get that on the B-side of fucking Bohemian Rhapsody. Smartest move in history.
Well, let's see. I'm looking at the track listing for Bohemian for A Night at the Opera right now. You're My Best Friend, great song. 39, my favorite Queen song ever. But, all right, Bohemian Rhapsody. So 3 songs. All right, Love of My Life, also a great song. But for the rest of I found the rest of the album to be really overblown and just kind of pretentious. And that's how I feel about a lot of Queen stuff.
I was going to say that I've heard Queen's entire discography, minus, greatest hits, as overblown and pretentious, pompous.
Pete Best's younger brother, Rogue
Best.
Rogue just posted something. He goes, he was asking people which movie they liked better, Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man.
Rocket Man, easy.
Well, I said, it's hard to compare because they're 2 different types of films. Bohemian Rhapsody. Excuse the lack of a pun. Bohemian Rhapsody is a straight biopic. Well, it's not really a straight biopic.
Yeah.
But Bohemian Rhapsody is
technically neither of them are particularly straight biopics.
Well, I know. Well, but
yeah.
Bohemian
I
Rhapsody
know what you mean.
is a biopic, and with a lot of chronological problems. Rocket Man is a musical where the lyrics of the songs are being used to further the narrative, and it's done brilliantly. The only real glaring error in Rocket Man is the story of how Elton takes his last name.
Looking at the picture on the wall in Dick James' office
of the Beatles, yeah, and we all know that he got John from the singer of Bluesology, Long John Baldry.
Yeah.
But again, that's the only real glaring error in Rocket Man.
What I really liked about Rocket Man is even if there are factual errors, like, Elton didn't write I'm Still Standing while he was in rehab. He wrote it in, the midst of his, crippling coke addiction.
Right.
But I felt like it was able to take those creative liberties because it wasn't presenting itself as a straight retelling of history, whereas Bohemian Rhapsody was, and it got a lot wrong. So I feel like it took a lot away from the movie while I was watching it. It took me right out of the movie.
The other thing that took me out of Bohemian Rhapsody was every time Rami Malek opened his mouth, I heard Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
Or I heard what was his name, Mark something or other.
I know who you're talking about. The guy in that.
Wherever you heard Freddie singing a cappella, or just playing a piano by himself, practicing, was this other guy. It was Mark something or other. I know. I don't know his name.
Mark Martel.
Yeah, Mark Martel, who is a fantastic Freddie Mercury sound-alike.
Mm-hmm.
But every time you heard Taron Egerton open his mouth in Rocket Man to sing, you heard Taron Egerton.
Yeah.
And by the way, did you catch Giles Martin's cameo in Rocket Man?
I did catch it, and I thought, is he playing his dad?
He's playing Gus Dudgeon.
Oh, really?
Elton's producer.
Huh.
He's playing Gus Dudgeon.
I thought he was playing George Martin.
No, George didn't produce Elton. Gus Dudgeon
did at some point in the 70s, Elton worked at Air Studios.
Not for that first album. Not where they were recording Your Song. No, that was Gus Dudgeon he was playing. But yeah, and Giles Martin also produced the soundtrack album.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but I feel like, Rocket Man was able to take the or was able to stray from what actually happened because it wasn't presenting itself as like, history. Because it's not like Elton John actually saw his younger self at the bottom of a pool.
Well, no, not at all. But again, but also you have to remember that Rocket Man was also based on Elton's autobiography.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
If
any of you out there haven't listened to it, go listen to it or read it.
I have an e-version. I have a couple other things I have to get through before I get to it, but I will be getting to it.
It took me a while to get through the audiobook, and it was read by Taron Egerton.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm a fan of Taron's from the Kingsman films,
which Elton was also in.
Yes, he was in the second one.
Yeah,
playing himself, which is really funny.
Beating up all those bad guys.
Yes, but Elton had final approval on the film. So, but I think my favorite moments in Rocket Man were basically using the music and using the lyrics to further the narrative, like Honky Cat becoming a conversation between John Reed and Elton John.
Yeah, like when it's a jukebox musical.
Yeah.
But it got very creative with the use of his catalog. Yeah.
It's exactly what a musical should have been. Unlike please don't ask me what I think of Across the Universe.
Oh, I don't. I will publicly say I hate that movie with a passion.
Me too.
Yeah. I don't think there's many defenders of that movie. Oh,
I know several. I told somebody who I found out was one of the producers on the film.
Oh, Jesus.
Well, he's somebody who used to be involved at the fest. And he asked me if I saw it and what I thought of it. And I said, I saw it. He goes, what did you think? I said, do you really want my answer? He goes, yeah. I said, I didn't like it. I hated it. He goes, really? Why? I said, okay, well, here's why. I said, one, it was incredibly cliche, making everybody's character name a name from a Beatles song or lyric. Two, it was so obvious that the writers and the directors wanted to make this an anti-war protest movie, but they didn't have the balls to set it, and they're trying to do it now. They wanted to make an anti-war statement now, but they didn't have the balls to set it in present day. So they set it in the Vietnam era because of the Beatles' music being in the 60s. They wanted to give it that 60s vibe, and it completely makes the anti-war statement trite and cliche. If you wanted to make a statement about what's going on now, which you obviously did, you should have said it in today's world.
To me, that whole sequence of, I want you, she's so heavy, is so heavy-handed with the metaphors that I about fell out of my chair laughing the first time I saw it.
I don't even remember enough of the movie to tell you what scenes I liked. The only thing I remember is just, what's her name? Was it Evan Rachel Wood singing?
I don't care.
I remember. The only thing I remember is Evan Rachel Wood singing "I Want to Hold Your Hand," having a girl crush on another girl, and that was fine. But if you're going to talk about jukebox musicals, I preferred Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band over Across the Universe, because at least Sgt. Pepper is bad and it knows it's bad and it doesn't take itself seriously.
Yeah. I mean, what the hell did you expect with the Bee Gees and Peter Frampton?
Well, it killed Peter Frampton's career. Seriously, Peter Frampton was the biggest thing in the 70s until that movie came out, and suddenly he was gone.
I read somewhere that album went, I think it was like double or triple platinum before it even came out, and then it was basically whatever the equivalent of that is, but for albums returned.
It's the only album to go. It's the only album to hit the cutout buttons before it was pressed.
Yes. And I think the RIAA actually had to change their rules because of that album.
I don't know. All I know is I actually own the movie on Blu-ray.
Why?
Because
It's that Steve Martin performance.
Because I was given a promo. I was given actually 2 promo copies of it from 2 different people, and I actually gave one. I did a gig before the whole COVID quarantine, so I played a gig somewhere, and I said, "All right, I'm going to give away a really shitty prize, folks. Gonna do a trivia contest, and I'm going to give away a really shitty prize." And I gave the prize away, and they go, "What is this?" I said, "I told you it was a shitty prize. I was not lying."
Oh,
but
fuck.
But no, you know what? I like that movie because it is so bad. Mm-hmm. It doesn't take itself seriously. And as bad as that movie is, there are 2 performances in that movie that are world class and are just some of the 2 of the best Beatle covers ever.
You talk about when Billy Preston appears on that roof of the building and he starts spinning?
No, I am not. I am talking about Aerosmith covering Come Together and Earth, Wind, and Fire doing Gotta Get You Into My Life.
That is very fair.
Billy Preston as Sgt. Pepper singing Get Back. Oh, that's horrible. It's awful.
You know, I actually showed my friend, I didn't make him sit through the movie, but I showed him that 15-second clip of him appearing on the roof of that building, shooting like a laser out of his hand.
Oh, yeah. Get back!
My friend looked at me like I had just shown him footage of somebody like being hit by a truck.
Oh, man. Oh, just it's hard. It's hard to take a movie seriously when the Bee Gees are dressed as pallbearers singing Carry That Weight at a funeral procession.
I think he could have just said, like, it's hard to take a movie seriously with the Bee Gees, full stop.
Oh, I like the Bee Gees.
Oh, I do too.
I am a and I'm a disco Bee Gees fan too.
Disco Bee Gees fan. That's a bold statement.
Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Are you kidding? That album is gold.
I mean, I really like the 60s Bee Gees.
60s Bee Gees are great. 70s Bee Gees. My 3 favorite Bee Gees songs are Tragedy, Nights on Broadway, and To Love Somebody.
I think my favorite 70s one has got to be Jive Talkin', though.
Yeah, Jive Talkin's all right.
You were just talking about the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. It's better than any of those songs.
Jive Talkin's great, but Tragedy and Nights on Broadway are hands down the best of the 70s Bee Gees output.
Well, but that's post Saturday Night Fever, though, isn't it? I know Tragedy is, at least.
Tragedy's my favorite Bee Gees tune ever, though. That song is a bitch to cover live, too.
Is it the high notes?
Yes, it is the high notes.
Sometimes I just think about Barry Gibb and I just wonder how.
It's difficult. It is, especially to sing it loud.
Oh, God, that Sgt. Pepper movie. I'm gonna be seeing that. I'm gonna be watching that in my sleep tonight.
I might pull the Blu-ray out and watch it tonight.
You know what? The sad thing is now I actually kind of want to get a Blu-ray copy of that.
You know what? You can find it cheap, man. It's certainly not in the expensive sellers lists.
Whatever the modern day equivalent of the cutout bin is.
No, you know what? It's a fun. It's so bad. It's a fun watch, because you know. But the thing is, these guys. I almost feel bad for them now because they thought they were really doing something they thought they were doing something great, but man, it's so bad.
Has it ever been
so bad.
documented what the Beatles actually thought of that movie?
Not the movie, but apparently John saw the Broadway the off-Broadway production
Of the Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah. And didn't care for it much.
Oh, Jesus.
I think Mark Lapidus and I were talking about that the other night because I guess he saw it was. I think it was either he saw that in the he saw that, and I think John was in the theater the same night he saw it.
I will probably. I don't have a date nailed down, but I will have Mark Lapidus on the show sometime in the next few weeks.
Mark is great. I think the world of Mark and Carol and their kids.
I don't know him super well, but I hope to get to know him better because he seems like an awesome guy.
I've gotten to know them better over the last couple of years. I've been like I said, I've been going to the fest since '91. You've seen in the fest program Pig Light Show, who does the psychedelic light shows for the Liverpool concerts on Saturday and Sunday rather. Pig Light Show. His name is Mark Rubenstein. Mark and I have become really good friends over the last 10, 12 years or so, and like he and I, Mark has become the closest thing I've had to a father figure since my dad passed away 25 years ago. So Piggy has had me as his assistant for several years. So I was on staff before the fest added the Apple Jam stage. And once they added the Apple Jam stage in 2015, I became a solid part of the fest's music lineup. So I've been a fest performer at every fest in Jersey and in Chicago since 2015.
If there's anyone out there listening who has not been to a fest and you consider yourself a musician, I will give you one piece of advice. Bring an instrument of some sort. Because I didn't know about these jam sessions on the, bottom-ish floor.
Yes.
Until I showed up there. And it's like, what the hell? I could have brought my guitar. And instead I ended up using someone's, drum set.
The cool thing is in Chicago, if you ask somebody, hey, do you mind if I play your guitar on a song or two? In Chicago, they'll be like, yeah, I needed to go to the bathroom anyway, man. Here, go ahead.
People were very, gracious with their drums, even though I ended up breaking somebody's drum head, and I still feel very bad about that.
Who was it? Were you playing the little miniature, tiny little drum kit?
There were a couple tiny ones, but one of them was like, a kid's kit.
There's one guy. His name is Tony.
I think it is Tony.
Tony. Tony's dynamite. Tony is a dynamite musician. Within the last year, just got a gig as the drummer in a Chicago-based Boots and Suits band.
Which one? Britbeat?
Yes, I think it's either Britbeat or American English. He's in one of those. But yeah, he brings this little. He got like a child's drum kit and put real head.
I think it was even like American Idol branded.
What I don't know if that was it, but it was like a toy drum kit, but he put real drum heads on it and uses like real kick pedals, and it like sounds like it's a dynamite sounding kit.
I think someone who is using that kit let me use it, and somehow I ended up putting a stick right through the snare head. And I was so fucking scared. I just scurried away right then and there and headed to the elevators. Oops.
Yeah, for me the highlights of the jams for me in Chicago are by the stairs, all the way in the back, on Saturday and Sunday nights, and they're run by Big D, Dan Phillips.
I remember. I stayed at one of them until about, I think it was 11:30, but I think they go much later. Can you confirm or deny this?
6 a.m.
What the fuck? How? Is it the same people?
It usually just dwindles down to Big D, and the last couple times it was just Big D and me, and we just sit there and just strum guitars, and finally we just stop playing. We're just sitting drinking, you know. But yeah, like we've gone to bed at like 5 or 6 in the morning. I don't do that on Sunday anymore because I when I go to Chicago I drive, and it's about a 13-hour drive home. So I tend to not do that because I need to sleep because I have to drive all the way back to Pennsylvania.
Hours.
From Pennsylvania, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Dan Phillips. Matter of fact, he goes live. He's going to be doing an all Beatle night from his page tomorrow night. Daniel Phillips. Big D. He's great. And John Merchave from Liverpool comes down and jams with Big D in Chicago.
I want to meet this Big D character.
You do. His name is Daniel Phillips. He is one of the coolest guys. The Jersey Fest is a lot of fun. It's great. The Chicago Fest, the vibe is a lot more laid back.
That's what I've heard from a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And that's why I'm kind of glad that was the one I was introduced to.
Yeah,
just kind of by a matter of location.
Yep. The Jersey one is cool. I mean, I have a great time. At both. But I've seen the difference firsthand from being at both of them now.
I've just been told it's a different crowd.
It's a totally different crowd. You know, it's the New York City versus Chicago. You know, just in the people themselves. It's
like,
but
I was astounded when I went there just at how nice people were.
Oh,
to
yeah.
just this, like, you know, kid who just showed up.
Yep.
And started inserting himself into things.
Yep. That's, you know, and that's the whole thing. I mean, in Chicago, everybody's very, very open-armed. You know, we're all there for a common thing, common love. It's very much a communal attitude. You know, everybody's like, you want a beer, have a beer. You know.
Actually, if I could use this, I don't remember the guy's name, but I hope that maybe somehow he hears this. There was a guy on, I think it was the Saturday of the last Chicago Fest, who became kind of just like my, you know, friend for the day, and we kind of went to all these panels together.
Okay. Do you remember his name?
I do not remember his name, but I remember he was telling me, you remind me of myself in 1977 at the first Chicago Fest. So I became kind of like the cutesy little mascot.
That's cool. Well, I've been talking to a lot of people who are bummed out about there not being a fest this year, and I'm kind of bummed, but with the way things have been going, had the Chicago Fest not been canceled this year, I wouldn't have been able to make it because I haven't been working. I wouldn't have been able to afford the trip.
I don't think I could have made it because, you know, the border is still closed.
Right.
So I couldn't have gotten down anyways.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have had the money to make the trip this year, you know.
But you know what that means, though? It'll just make the next Chicago Fest all the more special.
Chicago 2021 is going to be fantastic.
It'll
right
be
now,
just like a big reunion.
Well, that's what it is anyway. I mean, but right now we're still holding out hope. The New Jersey Fest was rescheduled for October.
Mm-hmm. And even I'm not sure how feasible it looks from what I've heard.
Yes, same here. But I'm kind of hoping I'm hoping it happens, but at the same time I'm like they're gonna be doing the 2020 Fest in October and then doing the 2021 Fest in March. It's too soon. Yeah. Way too soon.
Like 2 NYC area fests in less than 6 months.
It's less than 6 months. It's too soon.
Yeah. But you know, it'll just make the next fests more special.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, other favorite fest moments. Being Ruddle for a day and being called up on stage to join Neil Innes.
What was that like, being a Ruddle for a day?
Oh, well.
Did he give you a Ruddle name?
No, I was just Scott, but I did get to sing lead. I did get to sing lead on a Ruddle song with Neil Innes singing harmony.
Ooh, which one?
A Girl Like You.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny because it's a Smithereens hit too. Same title, different song.
Yeah.
But my good friend
There's
Ken
only
Thornton.
a certain number of words out there.
Yeah. Well, my good friend Ken Thornton talked to Neil and said Scott knows a lot of Ruddle stuff, and he's a really talented guitar player and singer, and maybe we could get him up to do something. And Neil said to me, he goes, so what Ruddle songs do you know? I said, most of them. Which one do you want to play? All of them. He goes, no, pick one. And I told him, I said, I could I be Stig? He goes, all right. So on Apple Jam the next day, Neil was doing his set. He and Ken did a couple of songs together, and then they brought me up, and I ended up playing the rest of the set with them.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't just one song. It's funny because that same weekend I ended up backing Roy Orbison Jr. for all of his set as well. Wow. Which was kind of cool. That was a pretty fun week. Jeff Slate brought me up as part of his set on the main stage to play Rattled by the Traveling Wilburys, and that was intense because in Slate's band, it was, like I said, it was him, Roy Orbison Jr., Alex Orbison was on drums, one of Roy's other two sons, Mark Bosch, who is part of Ian Hunter's Rant Band with Steve Holley, a guy named Mark Plotty, and Rick Mullen. Mark Plotty was part of David Bowie's band.
Okay.
So here I am on stage with these guys, and I'm just, well, I get rattled every time and I'm just sitting there playing my 12-string acoustic, and I'm having the time of my life, man. That fest was, I think that was the 2018 fest.
I'm gonna ask you one last question, and then I'm gonna wrap things up.
Okay.
Okay, you're a Beatle guitar player.
I'm a guitar player who plays a lot of Beatle music. I wouldn't call myself a Beatle guitar player, but
okay. That important distinction. If you could have any of those guitars that the Beatles played, which one? Not like the actual. Well, I mean, we'd all like the actual ones that like John played, but the same model, like.
If I could, you know what? If I could have one guitar, I've always wanted the Rosewood Telecaster.
Those are nice. I played one at the Chicago Music Exchange right before I checked in for the fest.
They weigh so much. They're so heavy.
You could kill someone with one.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a Telecaster fan. I have a tattoo of a Telecaster on my right arm. But I've been a Telecaster fan since I started playing electric guitar, and I just love the look of the Rosewood Telecaster. And I love this, and I love it. I just love Telecasters to begin with. So the Rosewood Telly would be my Beatle guitar. The Rickenbackers are cool. The Hofners are cool. Give me a good old Telecaster any day.
I mean, it's not quite a Rickenbacker 360, but I got like a Dan Electro 12-string a couple years ago, and I've been able to get some pretty good jangly tones out of that.
Oh yeah, I've got a little company out of Canada called Dillian.
Oh, I know Dillian.
I have what I call my Fakenbacher.
Oh yeah.
It looks like a black Rick with 3 pickups. I have their fake Rickenbacker 12-string.
I actually have a clone like John Lennon 325 that's sitting in my closet in pieces, kind of. Oof. Like, it doesn't have a bridge, it doesn't have a tailpiece. I'd have to get a lot of work done on it. But someday I do plan on putting the Bigsby on it. Or putting a Bigsby. I don't have one.
So we'll get it fixed, man.
Yeah.
This Dillian 12-string I have, it gives me. It's got 3 mini humbuckers on it, and it gives me every tone. It even has the same string pattern.
Mm-hmm.
The
high
Rickenbacker
one and then the low
the,
one.
the high ones. Oh wait, no, I think it is strung like a Rigger 12 because the Rickenbackers, I believe, have the high strings on the inside.
I thought it was the other way around.
I don't remember because I have so many guitars I forget at this point.
Yeah.
But all I know is that it gives me the jangle. It gives me all the sound. It gives me all the tones I need. But yeah, I wouldn't consider myself a Beatle guitarist. I don't do strictly Beatles music.
No, I take that back. A guitarist who plays the Beatles music.
Right. No, I mean it's cool. Yeah, I'm a musician. I mean Beatles were my go-to, and it's where I started learning. But if you see my master song list, the Beatles are only 1 page out of 24 pages.
Is there any small faces on that list?
There's not.
Is there any zombies?
There are a couple of Zombies tunes. There's a handful of Who tunes. There's a few Stones tunes. There's a ton of Monkees tunes.
Ton of Monkees tunes.
Because the Monkees are awesome.
The Monkees are very awesome. I don't care what anybody says about they weren't a real. Actually, you know what? If they're listening to this show, they probably don't think that.
If they're listening to the show and think the Monkees aren't a real band, you're half right. The Monkees were not a real band. They became a real band.
You know what? I don't even look down upon it's like, they didn't even play their own instruments. Yeah, none of those bands in California played their own instruments.
They played other people's instruments.
Yeah.
They borrowed the Birds, the Mr. Tambourine Man.
They all used
sessions.
the Wrecking Crew.
The only on Mr. Tambourine Man, the only bird who's actually playing on that track is McGuinn.
Yeah. But the Mamas and Papas had the Wrecking Crew.
I know.
Beach Boys had the Wrecking Crew. To me, the Monkees don't seem any different.
No, well, the only difference is the Monkees were not cast as a band. The Monkees was a TV show.
Yeah.
The Monkees was a TV show where 4 actors were hired to play the part of a band.
Mm-hmm.
They, in fact, did learn how to become a functioning band
Mm-hmm.
in addition to their roles as actors. But I can honestly say, in my Monkees repertoire, I can honestly say that I have at least 1 song from every Monkees album.
Every Monkees album.
I'm looking at my.
What song do you have from Head?
Songs.
Songs from Head?
Yeah, let me look. Let me look at my full list here. Bringing it up. That's not from Head.
I know it's from Pisces, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Jones.
That's true.
Yeah.
Wait, that's the.
It's just
that's
my
the wrong
favorite
list.
riff from the Monkees to play.
Yeah, and do you know what it's very similar to?
I'm sure it's gonna be very obvious. Yeah.
It's very similar to I Want to Tell You. It is very similar to I Want to Tell You.
I was gonna say there's a song by this band, but it came out after, from this band called Fire. The song, Father's Name Was Dad. And I think McCartney actually produced that song under a pseudonym.
I don't know it.
Most people
from
don't.
Head. From Head, I do the Porpoise Song,
Mm-hmm.
Circle Sky,
Mm-hmm.
As We Go. Wait. Wait.
No Diddy Diego War Chant.
Hold on. 1, 2, 3. I do Porpoise Song, Circle Sky, Can You Dig It, As We Go Along, and Long Title.
Okay. Long title?
So I think I do everything except Daddy Song.
What about the Diddy Diego War Chant? Hey, hey, we are the Monkees.
That's not a song.
That is true. Is long title, do I have to do this all over again?
Do I have to do this all over again? Didn't I do it right the first time? Do I have to do this all over again? How many times do I have to make this climb tonight? Yeah.
Oh, I love that one.
So I'm thinking. Let's see. From the first album, I do the Monkees. I Want to Be Free. Papa Jean's Blues. Take a Giant Step. Clarksville. I'll Be True to You. Yes, I Will. And Sweet Young Thing. From the second album, She, Mary, Mary. Not Your Stepping Stone. Look Out, Here Comes Tomorrow. Sometime in the Morning. Laugh, and I'm a Believer. From the in between single, A Little Bit Me, A Little Bit You, and The Girl I Knew Somewhere. All of Your Toys.
I
See,
love
Headquarters,
that song. All of your
Yeah. Let's see. Headquarters, You Told Me, I'll Spend My Life With You. Forget That Girl, You Just May Be the One. Shades of Grey, Mr. Webster, Sunny Girlfriend, Randy Southgate. It's almost the whole album. From Pisces, we do Salesman, She Hangs Out, Door into Summer, Love Is Only Sleeping, Cuddly Toy, Hard to Believe, Hanging Round, Pleasant Valley Sunday, Daily, Nightly, and Star Collector. From Birds the Bees, there's Daydream Believer, Tapioca Tundra, Zoran Zam. We do the single, D.W. Washburn, It's Nice to Be With You. Ladies Baby, St. Matthew from these sessions. So we covered Head. From Instant Replay, we do Through the Looking Glass. From Present, listen to the band Someday Man, Good Clean Fun, and If I Knew. Oh, wait. Oh, from Changes, I've been known to, I should add this, I do Midnight Train. Gotta add that to the list before I forget. I do that one. I gotta just put
You
that
just
on the
said doo-doo, and now it's
Hey,
on
doo-doo.
record.
Yes, that song is doo-doo, but I do it anyway.
Oh.
So we do have all the albums represented. That was Then, This Is Now. From Pull It, we do Getting In, Since You Went Away, I'll Love You Forever. Justice, Oh What a Night, It's Not Too Late. And then from Good Times, we do You Bring the Summer, She Makes Me Laugh, Our Own World, Me and Magdalena. And from the Good Times Plus EP, we do Terrifying, the B-side. So, yes, every album is represented except for Christmas Party, but I don't count that album.
One final question. Do you do, Have You Seen Your Mother, Baby Standing in the Shadow by the Rolling Stones?
I do not.
Oh, dude.
I do not.
That's like my favorite Stones song.
I don't even do my favorite Stones song.
What is your favorite? Actually, no, my favorite Stones song is In Another Land off of their Satanic Majesty's Request.
My favorite Stones song is 2,000 Light Years from Home.
The album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, is half brilliant, half nearly unlistenable.
For the Stones, I do Mother's Little Helper, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Sympathy, Ruby Tuesday, which is my favorite one to play. Let It Bleed, Can't Always Get What You Want, Dead Flowers, Wild Horses, Angie, and Waiting on a Friend.
From the superior British version of Aftermath. Because anyone that doesn't have Mother's Little Helper, it's like, oh, I know it's on Flowers, but it doesn't matter. All of those Abco Stones albums, like the American ones, can all burn.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for the American catalogs versus the UK catalogs. Like I said, the American Rubber Soul is my favorite Beatles album.
Well, it's also a different album. Like
Completely different album.
I think that's also my uncle's favorite. You know, it's folkier, but it always throws me off hearing I've Just Seen a Face instead of Drive My Car.
Which is
I think the reverse for a lot of people. You know, when they first got those CDs, it's like, what the hell is this? Why is this the starting song?
I just love the folky version of that album. I just totally dig it.
Say what you want, that's the album that inspired Pet Sounds. Not the British version, the American one.
All right, you really ready for hate mail?
You know what? I was born ready. I was born ready. If anyone would be getting okay.
Pet Sounds is one of the most overrated albums of all time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I like about 6 songs on that album.
It's I don't get it. I've listened to it. I've listened to the 5.1 surround mix. I don't get it.
I love Smile. I love the Smile sessions.
I've listened to the Beach Boys. I don't get it.
This is something I won't censor it. Mike Love, from what I hear, is a fucking douchebag.
Every so often I post a status on Facebook. This just in, Mike Love is still a dick.
Oh, yeah. It's like, imagine bullying your mentally unstable brother to come back in the band just so he can record Kokomo.
And then firing him.
Yeah.
We're gonna bring you back in the band just for the 50th anniversary tour.
Brian's
and then
back.
Fire you.
Oh yeah. God.
Yeah. I like the Beach Boys, but I've listened to Pet Sounds and I've been like, yeah, okay, Good Vibrations is great. Heroes and Villains is cool. But you know what?
I didn't hear you say Vegetables.
McCartney on
Celery.
On bass. On Celery. McCartney on Celery. Yes. That's right. McCartney plays bass on Going to Carolina by James Taylor on the original recording.
Doesn't George play guitar on that?
I don't know if George is playing guitar on that, but I know McCartney's playing bass on the one on the version that's on the Apple album.
Yeah. There's so much good stuff on those early Apple releases. Anyways, here's my favorite part of the show. I'm going to turn it over to you, Scott. What do you want to plug?
You find me on the web at www.scottericksonmusic.com. You can find me on Facebook, facebook.com/official Scott Erickson. And that's really about it. I do live streams on Tuesday nights on my personal Facebook page. You just find me there.
I'll put all the links in the descriptions for all of those too lazy to click or lazy to type.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have much to plug. I mean, just find me on the web at scottericksonmusic.com if you live in Pennsylvania or somewhere near there. Come hit me up. Come see me at a live gig and request a tune or two.
I'm not biased or anything, but go watch his live streams. They're very entertaining.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And thank you for coming on the show, Scott.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a blast, man.
It's been a blast for me too. Everyone else out there, thanks for listening. You can go home now.
Bands on the Run is produced by Ethan Alexanian. Additional voiceovers by Richard Phillip. This has been a Showtown production.